I'm not going to keep you all very long. It's been a minute since I've had a minute to sit down to do this. And I mean, the last weekend of June, we had our National FTX. Then the 4th of July weekend, of course, I was busy for that. Then the next weekend, I went with my captain to work on my shooting so that I could be as good as the people in my group. So I've been busy, and it doesn't look like it's going to let up. So I know that everybody really likes these. I've gotten messages that they like these, so I need to get back to it. Okay, with that being said, some of this may go back and hit some of the things that we had before. I'm just trying to really get it out there quick as I can for you. Continuing on, though, central to their institution scheme was the principle of separation of powers. As Madison bluntly put in the Federalist number 47, the preservation of liberty requires that the three great departments of power should be separate, and distinct, for, as he also wrote. So the accumulation of powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, and whether heredity, self-appointed, or elective, may justly be pronounced for the very definition of tyranny. They were very worried about tyranny. And we can really see why that was so important to them, unfortunately, today. As the Constitution Convention, at the Constitution Convention, there was great concern that an overreaction to the inadequacies of the Articles of Confederation might produce a tendency toward a single, centralized, and all-powerful national government. The resolution to such fears was, as Madison described it in the Federalist number 39, a government that was neither wholly federal nor wholly national, but a composite of the two. The institutional design was to divide sovereignty between two different levels of political entities, the nation and the states. I'm sorry about the glare, it's bothering me. This would prevent an unhealthy concentration of power in a single government. But the different governments, Madison concluded, will control each other at the same time that each will be controlled by itself. They didn't want anybody controlling to just that constant thing that they had worked so hard to get away from. Now, the Constitution was the original document of 1787 plus its amendments. It is and must be understood to be the standard against which all laws, policies, and interpretations should be measured. And do you know, just as a side note, that there are many other countries that have spoken up and said that our Constitution is one of the greatest things, and they wish they had that instituted in their own country. So the people that, are doing what they're doing today, they don't have the education to understand what we're talking about. The United States Constitution is central to American life. The Declaration of Independence asserts the ends of American government, equal rights, and the consent of the governed for the sake of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But the Constitution is the fundamental act of law-giving which orders our politics, secures our rights, and defines our nation. In 1774, after Parliament had shut down the Massachusetts legislature and closed the port of Boston in response to the Boston Tea Party, itself the culmination of various colonial protests against a decade of onerous British laws. The first Continental Congress advised Massachusetts to form an independent colonial government. Now, the first being the one John Adams wrote for Massachusetts in 1780. He was roundly skeptical of monarchs and overbearing leaders. So his constitution for Massachusetts made sure to pay attention to that. Most state legislatures appointed a one-term governor, largely excluded from the legislative process with minimal veto powers and negligible appointive authority. Now, at the same time, the colonies together began the process of creating the first Constitution of the United States. They resolved to declare American independence in July 1776. The Second Continental Congress also called for the drafting of a plan to unify the colonies as a confederation. Now, because all 13 states had to ratify amendments, one state's refusal prevented structural reform. 9 of 13 states had to approve important legislation on treaties, which meant that 5 states could thwart any major proposal. By the end of the War of 1783, though, it was clear that the new system had become, as George Washington observed, a shadow without substance. States were imposing punitive tariffs and refusing to protect property or enforce contracts. So they had to reevaluate the articles, and it was almost an armed revolt between 1786 and 1787 called Shea's Rebellion. A group of farmers objecting to a state law requiring that debts be paid in specie and to increasing farm and home foreclosures resulting from the law took up arms in protest and attacked a federal armory in Springfield, Massachusetts. But it was put down eventually by local militia. Imagine that. Now, the Annapolis meeting was not a success, as an insufficient number of states sent delegates. But James Madison and Alexander Hamilton persuaded that the conference to issue a call for a general convention of all states, meaning they didn't have really much of a choice. They needed to send somebody. Now, we're already at 9 minutes. I want to keep these short, so I'm going to go on, and probably, since I have just a little bit of time, I'm going to try to get the next one so that I know that we've already got a couple working that I can get out to you.